Huge shout out to Karen Benedetti, who is the chair of the Coffee Chat Committee, who put together this wonderful time for all of us to come together over coffee, welcome, and it's really nice to connect with all of you. My name is Emily Leonzik, and I work for the Markets Group, who is the association management company for NEFMA, and we're so excited to partner with you together, and we're so excited to welcome Panos Marketing here today to host our very first coffee chat this month, this season, and we're very happy to have you here today. Just to go over a few housekeeping rules, there will be 2 opportunities for you to ask questions today, and throughout the session, we really encourage you to engage and connect and submit questions when you have them and as they come up. You can also see that Tessa O'Sullivan put into our coffee chat today, our chat box, some different things that you can use to raise your hand and open up your speaking permission. So we really encourage you to engage, ask questions, and lean on Jim and Mel here to learn lots of new things today. Unfortunately, we have disappointing news to share with you that the fall conference has been canceled. And I'm sure you all know that this is a very difficult decision for many reasons. We want to come together. We want to come and learn and grow alongside with you and have conversation and see you face to face. But to prioritize the safety of all, we've decided to delay the fall conference or cancel it, and we'll come back together this spring. But we have some really exciting awards programming lined up, and we encourage you all to stay up to date by signing up for our e-newsletter, and we'll be communicating with you often to let you know different opportunities to get involved. With that being said, opportunities and engagement, I encourage you all. We just started a brand new Facebook page, so if you think you followed it before, make sure you go and check out. It's at New England Financial Marketing Association, and we are revitalizing our social media, and we hope to see your engagement and faces and likes and help us continue to grow the association. And now, without further ado, I am really honored to introduce you to Jim Panos, president of Panos Marketing here, and Melanie Coleman, senior manager of strategy, and they have some really exciting things to share with you. And we just want to say thank you for your long commitment to NEFMA and growing our association and engaging and sharing information and knowledge. So without further ado, I'd like to hand the floor over to Melanie and Jim.
Thanks so much. Really appreciate it, Emily. And we're excited to be here. I want to welcome all of the NEFMA members and hope to see you at some point face to face, and we'll take it from there. Is that screen all the way up? Am I seeing the whole thing here? I only see half of it, so maybe it's just me.
We only have a half right now, so.
Okay.
All right, one moment. Zoom is having a moment today. All right. Is that better?
Much better.
Excellent.
All right, so I want to welcome everyone to from new name and brand launch to market immersion in 6 months. This is a brief overview of the merger of 2 community banks, Bridgewater Savings Bank and Mansfield Cooperative Bank, into one larger bank, a new bank with a new name that is working hard to make a positive impact in their marketplace. So let's get started. Next slide, Mel. Quickly, a little bit about our agency. For those of you who don't know us, we're a full-service in-house strategic marketing firm. We specialize in financial institutions, and we do business across the nation, but our roots are in New England, as are a good portion of our clients. You can see our capabilities right there, so I'm going to save everybody the pain of my reading anything there. But today's presentation brings in a majority of those capabilities right into perspective, and of course, it starts with the bottom right-hand corner, the M&A communications. Next slide, Mel. Again, you already know I'm Jim Panos. I've been a member of NEFMA now since I was in banking, which goes way back. I'm not even going to say the year, but I was 8.5 years in banking. Before starting the agency in 1994, we had 3 people at the agency. And as we fast forward to today, I am very pleased to be president of a 30-person marketing firm with some great help and great knowledge. And people like Mel have made my job that much easier. Along the way, I've been co-president of NEFMA back earlier this century. And back then it was known, I believe, as the American Bankers Association Marketing Network of New England. So I think NEFMA is a little bit easier to say. So it's a great organization and I'm proud to be part of it. And I'm going to hand it off to Mel to introduce herself.
I don't have quite the introduction, but I am Mel Coleman, the Senior Manager of Strategy. I oversee media, marketing, and sales here for Panos. And media really means not just paid, but organic, digital, traditional, really that full immersion, what the user experience with the brand looks like and how we get that brand out to market, and really what that ongoing relationship is with existing customers and members and prospective ones. So with that, I think we can dive right in.
So yeah, we're ready for takeoff. What does it mean to launch? It's one thing to create a brand and another thing to launch it. And I think you've got to really do both to do it well. With any launch, especially in M&A, you never underestimate the need for communication, or in our case, and we like to over-communicate. This whole presentation we're doing now was born out of Bluestone Bank, to where there was a board meeting back, gosh, I want to say it may have been their April or May board meeting, where one of the board members asked a question that we probably all have heard many times. How do we know our marketing worked? So at our next client meeting with Bluestone Bank, that was brought up by one of the C-suite members and wondering what we could do to help them explain that. And that answer that we brought up, maybe we do a brand research project to help answer your questions and the board of directors questions. My concern was that the bank had only been in existence for 6 to 8 months. And so I mentioned that to the folks in the meeting, and that, you may get disappointing results. If you see it, you may only see results of anywhere from 2 to 5% of awareness, to which that C-suite member who had discussed this with me earlier said, I'd be overjoyed with that awareness at this point. And so we did it. Mel, why don't you chat a little bit more?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things when we're talking about launch and what it means to really not just raise the profile, but that immersion of it, and we're going to get a bit more into what that means. But it's it's not just launching SEM ads and putting it up on Facebook and saying, look at my audience that I'm already in front of knows about me. There are so many people in the paid space, and there are so many people that don't go on digital or not aware of it, and they don't take that in. And so it's really about how you get your brand in front of a really diverse group, because that's what all of these markets are made up, is really diverse audience with different backgrounds, different needs, and different ways that they are going to understand and interact with a brand. And I think that that's really what we're talking about here, is how could we ensure that as much of the market as possible was interacting with this new brand, with this new bank. And it definitely means going above and beyond comfort level. And so to that end, it is a multi-layered approach. So new names are fun. Building a brand is super fun. It's scary and it's stressful and it's all of the things. But we did it. And then from there, it's what do we do now? So this is all of the things that you see in pink here are truly all of the things that we leverage, because we know people, even throughout the pandemic, because that was an added challenge on top of this, is consumer behavior had changed so drastically during the pandemic. We needed to ensure that we were reaching people where they now were adjusting to being. And that did come from that blend of traditional and more new digital means. And that really, again, a difference in mediums of video, static images, quick little GIFs. There's also, we leverage, it's called a scavenger hunt. And it's something to just be like, hey, we have a new website. Can you find things? And if you find things, you could be entered to win something. So it's, again, helping people to interact and understand what Bluestone actually means. beyond just what they're seeing, but helping them to really be a part of it. And that can look kind of crazy. So with anything, it's all about scheduling, and the mantra that comes to mind is failure to plan is planning to fail. So we planned to the nth degree, back and forth with the client. There was constant communication to ensure that everyone was on the same page, everyone was comfortable and could clearly understand what was happening when. That was particularly important to the board. And so I don't know if anyone else knows them. I love them. The AEs hate when I ask for them, but Gantt charts is just a great visual. And this is a very simplified version of that flow chart, Gantt chart situation here, but this is what it can look like. And you know, radio and other more traditional means are flighted, whereas sometimes we can blanket that market with consistent, particularly with digital, with social, even with some standard bulletins, not necessarily digital. And those bulletins are the billboards. So they're static versus the rotating digital screens. But it's really, again, just using everything that we can think of to really ensure that no matter where somebody is, they're going to be aware of Bluestone.
So here's some of the creative, but I want a little background to all of this because it just didn't pop up out of nowhere, as Mel was saying. I received a phone call in late October of 2019 from Bridgewater Savings Bank, our client, mentioning the potential of a merger going on, and that I had to keep it quiet. I think it's okay to talk about it now. And so we started having meetings probably early November and chatted about some of the things that had to happen. And basically we started from scratch. We had two fairly well-established community banks, Bridgewater and Mansfield, but together under a new name. Well, we started from scratch basically. And when you look at the whole thing, you know, it's easy to say, but when I look back on this and think we had no name, we had no brand, we had no awareness, just two banks looking to join together and make a difference and start growing within their market area. So we undertook some significant discovery with large groups of people from both banks, line, middle management, C-suite. We did the whole thing and pulled together some incredible internal brainstorming with our staff at the agency, bounced every idea we had off the merger committee at the bank, and really found that the agency client chemistry was beyond good. It was great, and you need something like that to really make things work. So out of that came this creative, and we started the advertising actually in mid-September of 2020, right in the, well, kind of it was the little bit of the recovery from the pandemic, at least a temporary recovery, as we're finding out today. But because we were going October 1st, the merger had to be live, but the conversion hadn't happened. It wasn't happening until mid-February. But we wanted to let people know about it. And at that point, we had to launch as different divisions of Bluestone Bank because each had their own set of accounts because, again, the conversion wasn't ready. I believe the core provider couldn't do it until February because of what was going on with the pandemic. So we launched then the name and went out there for about 2 months, mid-September to mid-November. And then we kind of took our foot off the pedal over the holidays to some extent, and then focused on the conversion in February. And then you saw Mel's Gantt chart earlier where she started with the March of 2020. And that's when we really started the full the full bank merger efforts. Next slide, Mel, I'm sorry. And here's just a website and some in-branch merchandising, the website, if you want to have a look at it. I'm very proud of the job that our group did with that, of working with all the hardworking folks over at Bluestone Bank. And the website is bluestone.bank if you want to take a look at it after today's presentation. So having to have the whole bank name change really made it a very big challenge to get some traction. As a result, we did that brand analysis and awareness study, And Mel, you're going to start us off here, right?
Yes, because it's one thing to say, oh, this happened and we did a great job. It's another to actually look at the proof in the pudding. And so, we look at it from several different ways when it comes to measuring and understanding the importance of this. And we do have, again, as Jim said, the market analysis. We're going to get into those numbers, looking at what other competitors are looking like, what other banks and institutions in the area are getting for that overall awareness. But we're also going to look at how the campaign, as you can see here, how that performed, how the website's performing, because it's really, when it comes to awareness, it's not necessarily about this is the number of open accounts that always matters, but that wasn't the purpose. The purpose was to make sure that whenever somebody in the marketplace was thinking that they might need something, that Bluestone would come to mind, because it's also that long game. It's making sure that it feels like Bluestone's been there forever. And that was really the goal, is to increase that awareness market-wide. So from the measurable items that we have, you can see a breakdown here. I won't go line by line, just being mindful of everybody's time and patience. But obviously clicks and CTR are not going to happen on broadcast, streaming TV and outdoor, and those are estimated impressions. So these are all bought and flighted very differently. But we are able to say, okay, based off of what we were running, based off of what the providers and the pubs had anticipated for readership or viewership, we were able to then anticipate what the impressions would be. So in this time frame from when the campaign ran, and that is from that March 2021 up into early summer, we did get over 10.5 million impressions. Impressions in the digital space means that it loaded within somebody's viewport. So there's no way to know if somebody's eyeball stayed on an ad for 2 seconds, but we can know when it loaded in their screen, therefore more likely to indicate that they may have seen it. With anything, and this is weird to say, but I used to work in politics and in bank marketing, lots of things, but it always takes several touch points to get somebody to remember you. For us, we always said it was the 7th handshake. So if you met somebody 7 times, they would consider giving you their vote. So that's the same mindset, is how many times can we get in front of this user in a not obnoxious way? We don't want to reach that, the ad frequency where you're like, oh my gosh, get out of my face. We wanted it to be consistent, overarching, just kind of subtly everywhere, is all you're seeing is Bluestone. And I think that that's what we really achieved here as we get further into it. Looking at the website, which we consider your website your digital branch, it is the place where you are getting the most users per day that are going to be coming through. It's also the first place that most new non-prospective customers are likely to engage with you for the first time. So during this time frame, and when compared to the previous period, we saw a overall 103% increase, almost 104% increase in users overall, with an 87% increase in new users. An 83% increase in new users. And really the only thing that dropped slightly was referrals. But given the increases that happened in every single other area, particularly of note was organic search. So to quickly describe what these are called default channel groupings. So our default traffic channels. So organic search, that means SEO. That's people going into a web browser, if that's Google, if that's Bing or Yahoo, DuckDuckGo, Brave, any of the weird ones. It's when people type that in, how often were they coming from that effort of just searching for things and then clicking on Bluestone? Direct means that they knew what the URL was, or they had it bookmarked and went directly there. Skipping down really quickly, referral means that it came from another website. Think backlinks. So that's where they saw the Bluestone Bank URL on another website, somewhere else. It could have been from even like another blog or a directory, sometimes Google My Business. That would be considered a referral. Social, coming from social channels. And then other is an odd one. So sometimes other is other paid search efforts. Sometimes that's display efforts. Auto tagging within Google Ads doesn't always work perfectly. We prefer to manually tag our URLs because we find that there's more consistency in the naming convention, which makes reporting easier. So that other is a catch-all bucket for a lot of other means in which we drove traffic. But overall, an increase across the board is really what we want to see, is ensuring that new people are coming to Bluestone Bank.
Thanks, Mel. So on the market analysis, just a brief overview here. We surveyed 402 people within the Bluestone CRA market area, assessment area, and did it via email. And it occurred in July of this year. So if you remember back to my saying, we marketed in September, half of September, October, and half of November. And that was early on without even the banks being won, actually. And then our major push came in March. So that's March, April, May, and June. So there's 4 months there, 2 months in 2020. I'm sorry, showing my age there. And so that's total 6 months of really some sort of marketing exposure we were having in that market area. So when we look at the brand playback, which is basically a list of questions that ask, when we say the word bank, what name comes to mind in your market area? And then when we ask, again, unprompted, we're not giving names out there. Tell us the name of the five top banks that come to mind when we ask you about bank in your market area. And so you can see here, there are some larger competitors, Rockland Trust, Harbor One, TD. But when we look at the brand playback of unprompted market analysis, market top of mind awareness, Bluestone Bank got 6%. Now it was 1% in the top of mind, very top of mind, and 5% unprompted in the top 5. So that 6% of brand playback was amazing to me when I saw it. I was the one at that meeting that said 2 to 5%. And when we went over this survey with the bank back a few months ago, I think it was quite surprising in a pleasant way, in that they really started to make a dent in the market and getting their name out there. The unaided awareness overall, 5%. When you take a look at the overall of a number of banks in their market area, many of them have been established for a long time. And so again, another real positive, creative approach to how we marketed them, I think really started to pay off in a lot of these analyses. Mel?
Yeah.
I have the next one too. I'm sorry.
You do.
I'm sorry, I'm a little backwards here. Oh no, you have the next one, don't you? Maybe not.
Doesn't matter. I'll take it.
No, you take it. I thought you had it, and I had the next slide.
It's all right.
We didn't rehearse very much.
No. So just again, more of the same is looking at the awareness of the quote unquote new banks in the area, and that's that full market area again. And seeing Bluestone Bank at 8% is outpacing the others. And I know that there is that. I can almost hear the question being like, well, the others aren't new, but how often do these come up in your top 10 anyways? And how often, with branch closures and new branches and M&As happening, really, again, it's about understanding and ensuring that people have Bluestone top of mind. So outpacing Harbor One and a lot of the larger competitors in the space for this was incredibly important, and in understanding how we performed here. And then same deal with, just have to move this quickly, with the institutional familiarity among aware banking decision makers. So those people who are one, likely to be the one in that household or for themselves determining what bank and making those, especially like loan products, things of that nature. You could say those who hold the purse strings. But again, Bluestone more familiar at 25% and familiar at 24%. So right at that 50%, just about that 50% mark of understanding who they are. And that's super impactful because again, they did not exist prior to September.
Yeah, I mean, and this is against some very well established community banks in the marketplace. Most of these were the community banks that we looked at for this particular one. We felt that was a really good comparison. Thanks, Mel. So this really shows anybody who claimed awareness of new banks, which was about 33% of the respondents, which was roughly about 130 people, a little bit more. 24% mentioned Bluestone as their awareness of the bank. So 24% out of playback for new banks was, to us, again, another remarkable statistic. As Mel was saying earlier, although there are some banks in here that maybe they're not new, they've been around for a while, they may have opened a new branch, or there may not be that much awareness in the marketplace as to what a new bank is, and just saying, oh, a new bank to me would be Citizens, or it might be TD because I bank somewhere else. So to have Bluestone Bank come here with these competitors at 24% was, again, another reinforcement of the work that Mel and her staff did on communicating, and our creative department did on with the work they did on the new brand, and also the bank with the tremendous job that they did out in the marketplace. So it was a real team effort, and I was very excited to see this 24%.
And then finally here is looking at, again, looking at those who had responded, the 33% of respondents, those claiming awareness of new banks in the area, understanding where they got that awareness from. So again, the mentions here, as you can see, like, yes, 66% of that 33% did mention that they had seen the brand somewhere. And then the source of brand mentions. This chart on the right here, the bar chart, is really important to understand, again, why a media mix is so imperative, particularly when launching a new brand or an entirely new bank. So one, saw, branch, or signage. This is a catch-all. It's where people who can't quite remember where they saw something will be like, oh yeah, I must have seen it X. And this is, the signage could still be billboard. They could have been like, yeah, I saw a sign somewhere. So they may not necessarily indicate that that was an actual billboard. But as you can see, saw, branch, or signage, 45%, word of mouth, 29%. And that word of mouth has to come from somewhere because, again, 6 months of actual marketing for this. Sign or billboard, 25. And as you keep going down, still, it's just an incredible mix of things. And it really takes a team effort of all of these different efforts to work together to ensure that that brand awareness is there to help us be able to propel the bank forward.
So to recap, as we say here, it's about your audience first. Yeah, it really is. It really is. And I keep on going back to what Mel did with her media group and what we've done on everything else. But it really is trying to think what the audience is, what they're looking for, and how to maximize that opportunity in order to reach a full market and full market potential. You need to use several different platforms and mediums, as Mel was talking about, and get outside your comfort zone. It's okay to do some things a little different. We had a few promotions there that really were pretty interesting, that generated a lot of buzz in the marketplace. And not everybody would want to do that, but the folks at Bluestone Bank were more than willing to step outside. They looked at it as they were making a huge investment, not just in marketing, but just in the overall acquisition of the two banks and the merger of the two banks. My apologies. The merger of the two banks. It's not an inexpensive ordeal, and they were bringing an awful lot of dollars to the table, and they were relying on us. So we made some suggestions, and they were very, very willing to go forward. And we look at it as, take some chances, go hard, or go home.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah, for sure. And defining success is, what was really helpful is that the entire team on both sides with the bank and internally, we understood what the goal was here, and that was awareness. And that's odd. It feels uncomfortable for anybody who may have attended perhaps our last webinar, the last coffee chat that Jim and I did, where we were really focused on ROI and conversions and understanding that. There's a time and a place for that. And awareness isn't always that place to be focused on a conversion and having that conversion be, a completed application. That's great. But we also, again, long game, need to make sure that people know who Bluestone is. So ensuring that both teams were on the same page really helped us to be able to push the ball forward in a way that made both teams confident in the plan moving forward. And with that, meticulously plan and schedule your launch. For anybody who works or plans media, there's a lot of components that go into it, and you really have to work closely with your partners, with your creative team, with whomever is on your team to over communicate. internally and externally, and figuring out what that user experience looks like. So if somebody's coming from a digital ad or into the branch, or if they're going to hear you on Spotify, no matter how they engage with you, you need to think about that full life cycle. What are they going to get when they get there? And is that on brand for who that brand is, who the bank is? Are they going to get the touch points and get the feeling that the brand should provide? So there's really a lot that goes into that planning, more so than just scheduling when things are going to run. And yeah, and user experience matters. And that user experience really needs to be consistent throughout. So that way, no matter what touch point, you only have one opportunity to make that first impression. And first impression isn't just look, it's experience. So it is really a holistic view there.
Yeah, and one final thing before we bring questions. No, you can leave it. You can go to the thank you. Thank you very much. And one of the things I meant to mention was one of the great things about doing a project like this so early on in the life of a bank is we have some great benchmarks. And now we know what it's going to take going forward. So when those board members ask those questions, or when we're asked questions by the C-suite or whatever, we're able to now look at this on a regular basis if we start doing surveys, whether it's annually or biannually, to try to measure up against ourselves and make sure that we are doing the job that we all should be. And we're really excited. I want to again thank Bluestone Bank for allowing us to do this, and also allowing us to make this presentation. And with that, we'll open this up for questions.
Yeah. And I can see that we already have a couple here in chat. Pete, I hope that we answered the difference there between immersion and awareness. So to try to dispel any concerns there about what the two are. Awareness, again, just a general understanding. Do you understand that they exist? Is really the awareness piece, and then immersion is really the engagement. Is what does that feel like, and how can people interact with the brand? And so then going on to Jeff Ward, can you touch on the genesis of the name, and was the origin communicated in the launch? And Jim, please correct me if I'm mistaken here, remembering back to a year ago, but I believe that was part of our really big initial push, was understanding and communicating through, I want to say email, client communication or customer communications on social media. There was a landing page about it. There may have been some other ads about it as well to really talk about what it all meant.
Yeah, the coming up with a name, I'd be lying to you if I said that we just all sat around a table once and said, it's going to be Bluestone Bank, like that. It wasn't like that. It was a kind of like a funnel, if you will. We had all the names up at the top, and eventually we kind of came down to the bottom and Bluestone was the one that after some active conversation. And again, it wasn't just at the agency. This was more with the bank and discussing it with them. I remember being in Chicago at a client, and I was asked by the president of Mansfield Bank to please dial in and explain Bluestone Bank to the board of directors so that she could get sign off from them to go with Bluestone. And I spent about 40 minutes on the phone with the bank and the board at that time. And we had a great conversation. And once I went through some of the pieces of the strength of a name like Bluestone and how it kind of marries some things within the two banks, because that's what we were looking for. What are some pieces of each bank that mean an awful lot that sometimes customers don't even know, but maybe those that have been with the bank for a long time understand. And that's how we kind of brought this whole thing together to come up with a few different names. There was another one that was being looked at very strongly, but when we did a trademark search, we found out that it was not one that we thought we should pursue, and it ended up that Bluestone got more votes anyways, and we're very excited that we came up with that. I hope that quickly answers your question.
Yeah. And we do have more materials on really what that whole process was like. Would be happy to share that should anyone be interested. And Diane, we are very fortunate to have Diane from Bluestone on this. It is thank you so much for your very kind words. We love working with Bluestone. We talk about them all the time internally here at the agency. So, feeling is mutual, Diane. It's truly been a pleasure.
Thank you,
Uh,
Diane.
So
And-
Justin,
Yes.
sorry.
No, and we have some more questions. This is Karen Benedetti. I'm a NEFMA board member and the chair of the Coffee Chats. And I apologize, I had technical difficulties in the
You're
beginning.
back.
I was able to hear most of it. And I thank the Markins group, the new management group, for stepping in. But I do have more questions that have come in, if I can go over those now. First of all, when we were talking about the name, did you communicate that in any of the materials for the customers, how you came up with that name or what that means?
Yes, we actually introduced it ahead of the, and if you recall, I had mentioned our first marketing started in mid-September of 2020. We communicated the name to the customers with an explanation of what it meant and why we wanted it. We felt it was a very apropos name. I believe we did that in spring. I want to say it was May. Diane, if you're out there, you can correct me, but I'm pretty sure it was in May of 2020. We sent a note, we sent a letter out to all the customers with an insert that talked about the merger, some of the estimated timing, and about the name, and explained the whole thing. And we felt that that was important because, as we said earlier on, over communicating is really important. I've seen mergers go on that sometimes the customers don't even know the merger is occurring or an acquisition is occurring until the week is happening, or when they get a 30-day mailer for the conversion and they see their checking accounts changing to something else. And so I've always been of the school, as has everybody at the agency, that we want to make sure they know, especially your customers, know what's going on, because you can alienate them quickly if all of a sudden they're caught by surprise. When you think everybody is, when you think everyone is knowledgeable of the name, because you're so close to it, you're working that day in and day out. Diane, I'm sure you were, and you're thinking, oh my God, I'm eating, drinking, sleeping Bluestone Bank, when your customers aren't. And so it's important for us to go out there and talk to them as often as possible.
And then we had a couple of questions on brand. It was a great discussion on brand, but what would you say is good brand awareness? How would you define good brand awareness?
That's a tough one. And really what was helpful is, that initial conversation with the internal team that Jim had to define what was a good benchmark for them. I think what often happens as marketers, especially when we only work within our own institution, is we feel really important. So we think everybody knows. And that's just not the case. You have to understand and be respectful of the fact that if you're not out there with, Bank of America dollars, people may not know about you, even if you've been around for 150 years. Like, that doesn't actually matter as much to the average consumer today as it did 30 years ago. So that awareness piece always needs to be taken with a grain of salt. But I mean, anything, really, and this is where the comparison comes into play, but when doing that awareness piece, it's to get it on your competitors, to have others in this space to give you a sense of scope. We're happy because we landed Bluestone right in the middle of the mix there of the competitors within the space.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on what Mel just said, it's really relative, the brand awareness, because again, if you're looking at Bank of America or Citizens in the marketplace and the dollars, the deep top pockets they have for their marketing, one of the questions we asked Bluestone before the survey started was to give us a list of 6 or 8 local competitors that you want to compare yourself to, your name awareness to. And I felt it was very important that we brought that to play early on. And so they gave us a list, and that, I think one of those last charts, the more community bank ones, were names that the bank gave us that they felt that if they were in the market with that particular group, that the brand launch and the awareness was successful. And as you saw, they were right in the middle of that pack. And as a matter of fact, I think they were higher than some other longer standing organizations.
Okay, and playing off of brand awareness again, you used a lot of different mediums. Now, some of the folks on this call have larger budgets or smaller budgets, and everyone's trying to figure out what to use, but you use many different ones. And do you really need to use all of those?
It depends. I think it always depends. So I guess that's kind of an asterisk to everything I say here, but you do. And that's because, I mean, think of different learning styles. So I'm a visual person. I need to see it. Like people can talk to me and be like, hey, does this sound right? I'm like, I don't know, I have to read it. And that's just how I learn. But I know people in the agency, especially across departments, are so very different. And that's your audience too. So just because you think like, oh, everyone's on Facebook, I'll tell you right now, no, whole generations are not on Facebook. And same deal with, you know, I was always, I mean, this is Jim showing my age, but I thought, you know, billboards do not matter. Billboards 100% matter, especially remembering my time in Greater Boston, where you're just stuck on a highway for far too long staring at the same billboard. That does make an impact. So it is truly, it's got to be that blend to just continually remind people. And that's not going to happen if you're only using one or two mediums. You have to be prepared to use a mix if that's what the goal of the campaign is. So, you know, if you're like, I want checking accounts and I need them now, billboard probably isn't your best bet. That's also not super measurable for that, you know, for that endeavor. But when it comes to that awareness, yeah, that's super, super important.
And I have one last question. So you spoke about brand a lot, and that your last coffee chat, which was also great, was really more about metrics and KPIs. And so now, how does this help the bottom line? How do you calculate an ROI from an effort like this to kind of bring it back to the numbers?
Yeah. And that's, it's dependent upon a lot of different factors. One, there's always the break-even analysis that can happen. It's a little bit difficult because the brand didn't exist prior to. So, you know, it's one thing if we were just going to refresh the brand and, you know, maybe do a new logo, a new website, go that route. And then we have apples to apples comparison to be like, this is what month to month we were doing in revenue last year, and this is what we're doing this year with these efforts. So there is for sure that effort that's typically the route we would go is with a break even, as well as, again, you know, really making sure that all of our tracking is in place, tagging absolutely everything possible on the website, and getting credit where credit is due. You know, we don't want to take anything that's not from us, but where this was an awareness piece, this was an investment that the board and the C-suite really felt passionate about, is to make sure that long-term, you can't grow if people don't know you exist. And so the fact that, you know, they were really pleased with the fact that, you know, we really pushed ourselves right up into the mix of where their competitors are. And so that way we can really start to do that ROI building. Jim, did I miss anything there?
Yeah, no, you didn't miss anything. I just wanted to, you know, add my own thoughts. I think from an ROI perspective, it's more of a qualitative ROI, not a quantitative, especially after 1 year. One of the things that we've started to do after the first marketing push that we had this past spring, this fall, we started to focus not just on the name, but also on products and services. So now we're starting to bring things into play, but we felt it was important to just go really, really hard with the Bluestone name over the first 6 months of the existence of the organization. And now when we attach a product with, whether it's a mortgage or a commercial loan or a checking account to that name, it's A, people are going to know who Bluestone Bank is, at least we hope they do, and B, they'll be able to now consider them for one of the products that they may be needing. And that will allow us to create that benchmark so that next year when we do some of these things, and I'm not talking about brand awareness benchmarks, I'm talking about product benchmarks that we know from October to from maybe September to November of 2021, we opened X number of home equity lines or more, whatever it might be. Now, what are we going to do next year if we do a similar promotion? And then we can start really calculating some hard quantitative ROI off of that. That make sense?
Yes, it does.
Once today.
And Mel or Jim, do you see any more questions? I think that is it. Does anyone have any more questions? Because we still have a little time left over.
Did you catch the trademarking these names?
Yeah.
Yes.
To read it for everybody else, trademarking these names is often so difficult, and finding a clean name. Did the client or legal push back that there's an existing Bluestone credit union? And what was the workaround? How did you sell it through? Great question,
Okay.
Pete. Sorry, that was a hard one for me to read for some reason.
you know,
Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, no, we looked at through tests, and when we saw there were some areas, some potential conflicts, we brought them to the attention of the bank. They went to their counsel, and their counsel went through and received the clearance before we announced anything into the public. So really, you know, one of the things we do is we do research. We'll do our best. We'll bring no conflicts at all when we're going through the trademark service, and then coming back, and we're not lawyers, we're not patent attorneys, or any of that. So we then handed off to the bank, and they went to their attorneys, and their attorneys dug deep and found that they could get a trademark for that, and were able to secure it. And we've had no issues at all, and don't anticipate any.
Also about local competitors and understanding what the market area is. So as long as, you know, it was really about focusing on this area. There wasn't plans to go, you know, wildly national immediately and run into anything else. So yeah, to Jim's point, we really focus on what makes the most sense for what we know of the bank's future plans.
Yeah, we check not just nationally. We also check, because there's some locally. We go into Secretary of State website and check all of those. And in this particular case, we checked Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, because that's where the closest states to where Bluestone Bank's branches are. And so we checked all of those to make sure there were no real any strong issues at all. Whereas one of the other names we looked at, we saw something in Connecticut, and we immediately dismissed it.
And I think there's a footnote as to Pete's any concerns over search, given the global nature of banking, which you were kind of going there, but you may want to add to that.
Yeah,
It's an issue because you're everywhere, right? You're everywhere. You're not just in any particular state.
No, and so, you know, when it comes to search, SEO, search engine marketing, it was really about, you know, we stay up to date on the latest and greatest of all of the algorithm updates that are happening, particularly focusing on Google because they do own the vast majority of share of searches. So we do the best that we can to position the bank to win the top ranking, just as everyone else is. But no, I don't have any concerns over the search space. And given the growth that we've seen in organic search traffic to the site, it's proving that our efforts are working.
And an extension of that, right? What's the thinking of .bank extension? I know there are banks in the area, certain thinking is the time to go there. So what was the thinking around that?
So .bank was really an initiative that the bank had wanted to take on, and that was just concerns over data privacy and ensuring that they had their consumers or their customers' needs in mind, and saying, we care about your security, we care about your data, and so we're going to take this extra step for you. And that was really drives home what all of Bluestone is about.
Yeah.
Did you get, Jim, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, prior to the merger, Mansfield Bank was Mansfield.bank.
Okay.
So they had that, and it's not like they were, we were thinking about .com and .bank, and when we sat with the bank on numerous occasions, when they did some due diligence as to how Mansfield was doing with the .bank, and we're very satisfied with the fact that it was a little bit more of a protective measure, and so we ended up going with .bank.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pete. Love all the rapid fire.
Yes.
Yeah. Way to go, Pete.
Yeah, I don't see any other questions. Does anyone else have any other questions for this wonderful team on this great topic?
Feel free to reach out if you do.
Yeah, we're always around.
And so maybe we can do our wrap-ups and goodbyes as we're coming to the end of the hour. I'll first thank Mel and Jim for this great presentation. Again, I'm sorry I had a little clumsiness at the beginning, but I was able to hear most of it. And I will watch the full recorded session. It was absolutely fabulous. And congratulations to the bank for this. And if you two can wrap up, and then we'll see if the Markins group wants to come in and give any final messages before we say our goodbyes.
Mel, you want to go first?
Yeah, really, that was it. Is just thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it. Thank you again to NEFMA for allowing us to do this. It's always a pleasure.
Yes, and I want to thank NEFMA. I want to thank all the attendees. Really appreciate you coming out. I know everybody's really busy. Hopefully this offered some value. And we're looking forward to working with the NEFMA and the new management group. It went very well. Congratulations, you guys did a great job. And my final thank you is to everybody at Bluestone Bank, and specifically today, Diane, for all of their assistance through this. And again, as I said earlier, giving us permission to do this presentation. Great job.
I'd like to wish you all a good afternoon.
Thanks.
Same.
Same to you.
Good
Have
afternoon,
a great day,
everyone.
everybody. Bye now.
Bye-bye.